Our brain and biology has been sculpted to incline us towards certain ways of feeling, thinking, and behaving. For instance, we have a number of biological machineries that capitalize on aversive signals to motivate us to act in ways that are essential for our survival. Hunger, for instance, is triggered by low blood sugar and motivates you to eat, an important early warning system for an organism that required much more time and effort to find food than going to the refrigerator door, or kitchen cabinet, or fast food restaurant. Thirst is an aversive signal that motivates us to search for drinkable water prior to falling victim to dehydration. And pain is an aversive system that notifies us of potential tissue damage and motivates us to take care of our physical body. You might think that the biological warning machinery stops there, but there's more. Although not common sense, although not intuitive, the pain and aversiveness of loneliness, of feeling isolated from those around you, is also part of a biological early warning machinery to alert you to threats and damage to your social body, which you also need to survive and prosper. Now, just about all of us have felt physical pain, and nearly all of us have felt the heartbreak of homesickness, the agony of bereavement, the torment of unrequited love, and the pain of being shunned. All of these are variations on the experience of loneliness. When I started to study the effects of loneliness in brain and biology a couple of decades ago, loneliness had been characterized as a gnawing chronic disease without redeeming features. It was even equated with shyness and depression, with being a loner, a person with marginal social skills. Scientific measurements and sophisticated calculations, to our surprise, revealed that these were myths. Science and common sense had again produced two very different depictions of a phenomenon. And yet, if you look at the way we are increasingly living our lives, it shows the extent to which we still buy into those myths of loneliness and values of autonomy and independence. For instance, if you look at the percent of one-person households in 1940 across the United States, it was largely less than 15% of the households by state. Fast forward to 1970, and it's grown to be between 15 and 20%. Fast forward to 2000, and it now exceeds 25% in most states in America. And that light blue state, Utah, in the 2010 census, has gone darker blue. The prevalence of loneliness is also on the rise. In the 1980s, scholars estimated that about 20% of Americans felt lonely at any given point in time. Two recent nationally representative surveys indicate that this number has doubled. But you don't hear people talking about feeling lonely. And that's because loneliness is stigmatized, the psychological equivalent of being a loser in life or a weak person. And this is truly unfortunate because it means we're more likely to deny feeling lonely, which makes no more sense than denying we feel hunger, thirst, or pain. For living with loneliness, we now know is a major risk factor for broad-based morbidity and mortality. Consider a couple of the conditions we know about premature death. Living with air pollution increases your odds of an early death by 5%. Living with obesity, we know a national health problem, increases your odds of an early death by 20%. Excessive alcohol consumption, 30%. A recent meta-analysis of over 100,000 participants shows that living with loneliness increases your odds of an early death by 45%. We're not the only social species, and in experimental investigations of non-human social animals who were isolated shows they too suffer deleterious physiological consequences and an abbreviated lifespan. Across our history as a species, we have survived and prospered by banding together, couples, families, and tribes for mutual protection and assistance. We think of loneliness as a sad condition, But for social species, being on the social perimeter is not only sad, it is dangerous. The brains of social species, including our own, have evolved to respond to being on the social perimeter by going into a self-preservation mode. If you isolate a rodent and then put it in an open field, such as this box in the bottom of the image, it engages in what's called predator evasion. It walks around the outside and doesn't venture into the middle, where escape from a flying predator would be more difficult. When humans feel isolated, they too are not only in an unhappy circumstance, but in a dangerous circumstance. And their brains too snap into a self-preservation mode. In a brain imaging study that we conducted, we showed people negative images that had nothing to do with other people or negative social images while they were sitting in a scanner and we were scanning. What we found was the lonelier the brain when a negative social image was presented, that is, in a person's environment, when something negative socially happened, the brain allocated more attention, greater visual cortical activity, depicted in yellow here, to that image. Now, as you follow that image forward, you come to those two blue areas. That's a temporal parietal junction. This is a piece of brain tissue that's involved in theory of mind, in mind reading and mentalizing, in taking another person's perspective, in empathy. It's responsible for the attentional control required to step out of your head and put yourself, at least figuratively, inside the head of someone else, so you can take their point of view. The lonelier the brain, when something negative in the social context was depicted, the less the activation in this region. It's dangerous on the social perimeter. When something happens negative in the social environment, that brain is focused on self-preservation, not a concern of the other person. The similarity in neural and behavioral effects across phylogeny is a testament to the importance of the social environment for social species. And these deep evolutionary roots, tilting our brain and biology towards self-preservation, also suggest that much of what's triggered by social isolation is non-conscious. For instance, when you feel isolated, you feel this motive, this desire, this intention to connect with other people again. What you don't feel is that your brain has gone into a hypervigilance for social threats. And this hypervigilance means you introduce attentional, confirmatory, and even memory biases in terms of those social interactions. And if you're looking for dangers, you're more likely to see dangers whether they exist or not, meaning that you're more likely to have negative interactions. And that threat surveillance of always looking for the next foe activates neurobiological mechanisms that can degrade your health and lead to early mortality. Loneliness increases defensiveness because you're focused on your own welfare rather than taking the position or perspective of people with whom you interact. Loneliness increases depressive symptoms, which has the odd effect of decreasing your likelihood of having social conflict, and through the acoustic and postural and facial expressions of sadness, such as this child in this picture, serves as a signal to others in the vicinity to reconnect with you if they're willing to do so. So it's a safe call for connection. Loneliness increases morning cortisol levels, a powerful stress hormone, the consequence of the brain's preparation for yet another dangerous day. And loneliness increases prepotent responding, which means you're more likely to fall victim to a whole host of unhealthy, impulsive behaviors. And at the end of the day doesn't bring an end to the brain's high alert state. If it's dangerous to fend off wild beasts by yourself with a stick, imagine how dangerous it is to lay that stick down at night when predators are out and you're without that safe social surround. We have found that loneliness also decreases sleep salubrity, increases the number of micro-awakenings, increases the fragmentation of sleep, and thereby decreases the detoxification of stressful days over the course of the night. Loneliness even alters gene expression, such as inflammatory biology, to deal with assaults. Not long ago, we thought about the genes as the keyboard on which life's song played out. What this research suggests is that if the genes are the keys on the piano, then the environment, including your social environment, is the pianist, influencing which keys are turned on and off. Well, if loneliness is dangerous, what can we do about it? When we're hungry, we can go to the refrigerator and get a snack. When we're thirsty, we can go to the faucet and draw a glass of water. But when we're lonely, we have no pantry full of friends with whom we can connect. And no, online social networking does not replace the comforting touch of a friend. First, recognize what the signal is and don't deny it. Second, understand what it does to your brain, to your body, to your behavior. It's dangerous as a member of a social species to feel isolated, and our brain snaps into a self-preservation mode. That brings with it some unwanted and unknown effects on our thoughts and our actions toward others. Be aware of those, understand those effects, and take responsibility for your actions toward others. And third, respond. Understanding that it's not the quantity of friends, it's the quality of a few relationships that actually matter. Attend to the three components of connectedness. One can promote intimate connections by developing one individual who's trusted, in whom you can confide, and who can confide in you. You can promote relational connectedness by simply sharing good times with friends and family. We often go to the dinner table happy that we've provided for our family, but having forgotten to share any good times with them en route. Collective connectedness can be promoted by becoming a part of something bigger than yourselves. If the obstacles to connection seem insurmountable, consider volunteering for something that you enjoy. Perhaps helping to serve the needy, volunteering in a museum, a zoo, a running club, or a TEDx event. Or simply taking time to speak to elders at a retirement home. Sharing good times is one of the keys to connection. And don't wait. The next time you feel alienated, isolated, or excluded, respond to that aversive signal as you would hunger, thirst, and pain, and get connected. Thank you.